Hi, I'm here to give you a quick overview on a proposed legislation called the Liberty Act. And I'm putting it out right now in response to the overwhelming appreciation that throughout America had of U.S. Senator Ben Sass from Kansas during the Kavanaugh hearings, where he came out and started talking about things that I've been talking about for a few years here, regarding how the powers of Congress, not only the powers of Congress, but the powers of the states over the past 100 years have been eroded and given over to federal agencies, where 90% of our laws today are made behind closed doors in federal agencies. And this is what employs 10,000 registered lobbyists spending $3 billion a year to help billionaires and multinational corporations buy the best laws money can buy. It's why all the wealth has been filtered up to the 1%. It's why the middle class has been destroyed. You can trace every problem in America to the fact that all these powers of Congress, which Washington said you can never give a power of Congress to a public or a private agency, because this power will always end up in the hands of cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men. This is the customary weapon by which free governments are destroyed. Washington told us that in his farewell address, September 19th, 1796. And we've decided to ignore President Washington. And that's why we're in the fix we're in, the federal agencies. And what the Liberty Act that I propose is to take certain overreaching national issues would be retained to the independent, but you have public agencies, independent agencies, and private agencies. Again, the public agencies would all go to the states, where they already have mere organizations set up. The US EPA, Health and Human Services, Department of Education, USDA. Now, other organizations like this, where the states already have established mere organizations adjudicating and applying the laws. Congress would still pass an overall broad law for each of these categories, and Congress would still have to fund it, but the states would then administrate it. And if there are laws to be created to help that state do it, that would have to be done in the state legislatures. Okay, this leaves independent and private agencies. Independent agencies are like the FDA, the FCC, SEC, Security Exchange Commission. FDA is Food and Drug Administration. Commodity Futures Trading Commission, CFTC, and other federal agencies like that. The private agency, there's really only one, and that's the Federal Reserve Bank. It's interesting to note that when Washington was talking in his farewell address and said, this is the one thing you can't do, you can't take a power of Congress, he was talking about Article 1, Section 8, Paragraph 5, which is Congress's power over the creation of money, its value, and its exchange rate. That's the only law that he allowed to be given to a private agency. And again, he said, if you do this, if you take a power of Congress and give it to a public or private agency, again, this will always end up in the hands of cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men. This is the customary weapon by which free governments are destroyed. This is exactly what's happened here in the United States of America. That's why everything's so screwed up. So what I'm proposing is the Liberty Act. First part, public agencies, back to the states, all 50 states. This results in instant campaign finance reform, because there's no reason to pay lobbyists anymore, because they've got to go out and chase around 50 states trying to get their laws written for their clients against us. It's not going to happen. The other thing it does, well, because it does that, it's instant healthcare reform, because the FDA is so embroiled and entwined in healthcare. 90% of our drugs are generic. Why are they so expensive? Well, it's because the FDA hands out monopolies. Can you see all these independent independent agencies, their powers to make laws, now would revert back to the Congress. Can you see Congress passing a law that allows them to appoint exclusive monopolies to generic drugs? The one I take was $25 before Obamacare, which I call, oh, be careful, took effect. Immediately it became $450. Now it's dropped back down to $250. How does that affect insurance? Well, obviously it takes it up. And what they're doing with drugs, Big Pharma, the insurance companies are doing the same thing. We're getting ripped off not only once, not only twice, but 3 times because the big healthcare organizations are doing the same thing. It's interesting to note my opponent, Sherry Bustos, here in the 17th Congressional District, her last job was with an Iowa big healthcare doing PR. You know what they paid her? They paid her, was it $306,325, something like that? Who is she representing? She's collected $4 million. 11% of it comes from the district. Who's giving her all this money? Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo, big healthcare. Who does she represent? Exactly. So what we've got to do, we've got to then take all these independent agencies, and those powers go back to the Congress. A fine example is, how about the FCC, determining what internet policy is going to govern 330 people living in the United States of America. What in God's green earth have 5 former lobbyists at the FCC? What kind of power? How did it become about that they can decide whether it's going to be net neutrality or something else? This obviously is a decision for Congress. And take that problem with the FCC or the FDA and multiply it thousands of times. And this is exactly why we're in the fix we're in, because all these things are done behind closed doors. It's wrong. It's unconstitutional. We are not a democratic republic anymore. If people want to be a democracy, you can have it. Democracy is like warmed over communism. We've never had it. That's not what our Constitution lays forth. That's ancient Greece. And they killed each other all the time. And that's where we're going in this country because we're bankrupt because of this. You know, we used to run balanced budgets until we started creating all these agencies. Before Nixon instituted Nixon shock and took America off the gold standard. Yeah, look at healthcare. 1,250 pages that theoretically no one read in Congress because they had to pass it so they could see what was in it. But in it, it stipulated the next 10,000 pages were to be written by Health and Human Services with the help of lobbyists. Well, there's 90% of the laws we live under. Are you happy with your healthcare costs? Are you even happy with your healthcare? Well, if you are, you're probably not happy with the cost. And that's the problem. All these agencies got involved and wrote it. If it had been written in Congress, we wouldn't have these problems because they'd be done in the open process of the public forum and people would be looking in to see what's going on. And they would be calling up their congressman or their senator and saying, hey, what the hell are you doing? Right? Well, we don't get that privilege now. We don't get that right. And the result is that the government rules the people. That's not what America is all about. If you want to reform it, you want America back. You want things to be the way they should be, the way we think they should be. We have to take these powers back. And that's exactly what my proposed Liberty Act does. All public agencies back to the states. Go back to Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution, lays out the powers of the Congress and says whatever's not here is the power of the states. Well, those are all the powers that are now being wielded by public agencies. So those go back to the states. Independent agencies go back to powers to make laws, go back to the Congress. The Federal Reserve, that leaves that one bugaboo, that private parasite, Federal Reserve Bank. Are there alternatives? You bet there are. And I've got a video on my website on the first page, and I'll put it along with this video, and I'll post it on my blog page where I describe in full the 3 different parts as best I can formulate it right now, the Liberty Act. and it's a video. It's called "The Orderly Removal and Replacement of the Federal Reserve." It can be done. It's been done in the United States before. It worked really, really, really well. You'll have to tune into that. But that's what it's all about. We've got to do something. This country's in a revolution. A lot of people don't think so, but we're watching it in real time. We're halfway through. That's a subject for another video, and we'll come up with that. But for right now, I wanted to share with you the Liberty Act, what it does, why it does it, and why it is so important for us to pass this. Thanks much. Talk to you soon.